Ooh boy, how do we start this one? Y'all aren't ready, let me tell you. What's going on, Tamers? East here, aka Worried Mamimon, and I say that because we just finished up our second week of the BT23 Hacker Slumbers event over here in Asia. And after crunching the numbers and tallying all the results, yeah, is all I can really say. It's no surprise that Yugioh is far and above the strongest deck in the game right now, and yeah, after actually tallying the results from last week's events, everybody definitely knows it. But this video isn't meant to be all doom and gloom. We'll definitely take a look at last week's results, but watch to the end of the video because I think you'll definitely be surprised. Let's just end it with that. Yeah. Roll to the main part of the video. So if you had the fortune to play against a Yugioh deck within the last 2 weeks, and it's probably no surprise to you that this deck is curb stomping the game right now, with an incredible 25 wins over the course of the past week. The next best deck under it is Omnimon with only 7. So yeah, this has me a little bit worried because we haven't seen like vast differences in decks performance since Apocalypse in BT15, where there was something like 21 wins the first week and then 25 wins the second week or third week, something like that. Yeah, paralleling to a time where we had to hit a secret rare in order to make the game a little bit more balanced, maybe doesn't bode well for this little butterfly. On the topic of Omnimon, with pretty much every other deck seeing less relevance right now other than Yugioh, Omnimon has risen as maybe a way to fight against this deck. I'm not a big believer that it's a great advantage matchup. I don't think Yugioh has any disadvantage matchups that I know of right now. Potentially. Asterisk on that last bit there. Maybe we'll come to that a little bit later at the end of the video. But yeah, for whatever reason, if you have to beat an opponent who's OTKing you, maybe OTKing them back is the best answer. A couple of the other strong decks from last week are also still managing to hang on. Things like Mastimon, Royal Knights, of course, Gallantmon being no slouch at all. Gallantmon actually managed to take one of the large-scale events that happened in China over the past week, and I think it was a 265-man Super Tamer battle over there. I wonder if that was a qualifier for the World Championships. I think it was, but we'll take a look at that deck in just a bit, so keep watching. Some surprise tops as well from things like Sakuyamon, which I guess with the new advanced deck coming out within the relatively near future, a lot of folks are getting hyped up on this deck and maybe going back to it just to get their, you know, the reps in for when the new cards come out. Alongside CS Alphamon, I messed with this deck a little bit last week. Pretty fun. You can actually include some of the newer CS stuff as well. So this deck has Alphamon in it, but it could be, you know, any manner of other cards within the overall CS card pool as well. Jesmon included, by the way. Yikes. And finally, some good news and bad news, where last week we didn't really see any tops from decks like Belphamon or, you know, the Liberator Ghost cards in Dellahamon. We did get a couple of results this week. The unfortunate part is the people did not share the full list. I tried. With it still being tournament season here, it feels like a lot of folks are still keeping their decks close to their chest, and these two decks seem to be no exception. Fun fact, question mark? Literally 1 out of every 3 wins this past week was Yugioh. Do with that information what you will. I think it's made a lot of people sad with that. The first deck we're going to take a look at today is going to be the Gallantmon deck that won the large Chinese regional event that was held last week, and it was a 256-man Super Tamer battle event over here in Asia. And yeah, a red-based Gallantmon with pretty much no cool boy inclusion definitely piqued my interest. The gameplay here is mostly the same, using your search cards in the BT21 Gallantmon cards, the Gallantmon X antibody, as well as things like your Gallantmon X antibody as a way to go through the deck very quickly and amass your pieces. The Gallantmon X, of course, giving you a way to recurse your level 3s if he's taken out over the course of a single turn. And then once you have enough pieces gathered up, you can start to go into your level 5s and later on into your level 6s. The BT12 War Gallantmon allows you to delete a 4000 DP or lower Digimon, but if you don't do that, you have the option of evolving at cost -1 directly into a Gallantmon as per its effect. This effect typically isn't used as much considering the War Gallantmon X antibody is such a good card you want to have in the stack, so you typically bypass this effect and just use the inheritance effect of gaining +2 memory after an attack if your opponent has no Digimon on their board. With how much removal this deck actually has, that's a really low bar to achieve. This list also includes 1 copy of the BT17 War Gallantmon as a way to be able to unsuspend sometimes an inheritance whenever you swing, and you delete a Digimon by an effect. So outside of the Gallantmon X antibody, who's also able to unsuspend, this gives you a 3rd potential check if you really need it. And speaking of the War Gallantmon X antibody, this guy is incredible. Plus 3000 DP, he prevents you from being bounced to hand or dex for a turn, and inheritance just gives you sec +1. When combined with cards like the Gallantmon X antibody I mentioned before, you know, you're eating through like 3 to 4 security with 1 swing, no problem. Moving on to the level 6s, it seems like as Gallantmon has kind of evolved throughout the game's lifespan, their level 6s have really gone from just a core set of cards to a toolbox of pieces that you might want to use in different situations, followed by Gallantmon's Antibody. We've got the BT23 Gallantmon who can reduce play cost and then delete things basically 2 times, once on play, once on attack. It's also on evolve, but typically you're just playing this guy down. Similarly, you also got the promo Gallantmon, who's a bit more defensive in nature, hitting a 13k or higher DP Digimon, and if you don't do that, or the Digimon's not deleted for whatever reason, you get to recover 1. He's also got blocker and rush on him, so he's a bit more defensive, but also he's got the offensive pieces that some of the other Gallantmon cards have as well. This also runs 1 copy of the BT17 Gallantmon. If you, for whatever reason, need to get super big, he gives you the plus 3000 2 times, or he can delete 2 things off the board that I believe are 8k or lower DP. And then finally, new to the gang is the BT23 Gallantmon, who essentially just turns purple decks off. He just hits the off switch on things like Jesmon and says, hey, don't play Tamers or Digimon from the trash for a single turn. This effect seems particularly useful if you can manage to get to this guy and then immediately evolve him into the Gallantmon Antibody. So you've kind of activated a floodgate, and then you've put the offensive spear on the Gallantmon X Antibody as a way to do damage and potentially close the game out next turn. When you would make that heavy evolve cost and tip the memory over to your opponent's side, you can rest the Takuto Tamer. He allows a Digimon to attack, but it also gets raid. This means you can do some pretty cute plays where you can tip the memory over by going into a Gallantmon X Antibody. He can do all the deletion effects that he has, and through that you can gain memory off of some of the cards like the Guillemon X Antibody's Inheritance effect, the Growlmon X Antibody's Inheritance effect, and then once you've made the swing and you've made him unsuspended again, and your opponent has no Digimon on the board, you get +2 off the BT12 War Growlmon, and you can essentially keep your turn to swing again. Not to mention you've got some really scary level 7s in the Omnimon X Antibody for 1 more extra swing for game without having to suspend a Digimon. And then in the late game you got access to the Gallantmon Crimson Mode Ace either defensively or offensively. If both players' trash has been built up quite a bit, you can use him to just burn through all your opponent's security and make the winning attack for game. Despite the fact that Yugioh was legal during this tournament, it's good to see some of the older decks are able to fight against some of this crazy new stuff we're getting. I'm going to do a bit of searching and digging and see if I can find the VODs from this tournament, and we'll definitely watch those on stream if I can this week. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Digimon card game content shoveled directly into your YouTube feed, as well as to know when those streams go up. The next deck we're going to take a look at is going to be Jesmon, probably my most anticipated deck for the Hacker Slumber set, despite the fact that I have been procrastinating pretty heavily on building and also practicing with it. Digimon Time Stranger is fun, alright? Give me a break. I think a question that's kind of been on most folks' minds who've been playing the Jesmon deck is like, which version is better, just going all out pure Jesmon or including a couple copies of the Ganku and the Ganku X Antibody as a way to get some really powerful defensive utility as well. From the results that I've seen though, I think the Jesmon and plus Ganku version of the list is the more popular one in Asia right now, which is so difficult to pass up on a good blanket protection effect that the Gankumon X Antibody provides for, you know, your entire board for a turn. This list heavily utilizes a lot of the new cards from the BT23 set, including the Huckmon, who's a great searcher, grabbing 1 Huckmon or Sistermon named card, as well as 1 Royal Knight Digimon, which we'll see in a moment can be particularly scary. Not to mention the new Jesmon himself, who can warp for 5, while also being able to play out Sistermon on the board for free from hand or trash, or his Ate Rene Pour token. The 3 Musketeers, guys, you know the names. I'm not a scholar. This list also seems to heavily favor the new Sistermon cards. For example, the new Sistermon Blanc, allowing you to essentially draw from security and then recover immediately. And then whenever she's suspended, you can evolve into a Digimon who has either Huck in name, CS in their traits, or is a Royal Knight, which for this deck is pretty much any card in the deck. This is particularly useful in getting some really crazy combos on the board, especially when you're trying to go into a Gankumon X Antibody. You can like basically build up a board by having a Gankumon out and then use her when Jesmon attacks to play down the Gankumon X Antibody and evolve and get the blanket protection. Defensively, the list also uses a couple copies of the Sistermon Ciel or Sistermon Noir, depending on what region you're playing the game. This card's really cool. Having blocker, can hit a 4 cost or lower Digimon when it's played, and then whenever it's suspended, you can just de-Digivolve something once. Not to mention you've got the Sistermon Ciel Awakened, who can come down whenever it sees a Sistermon Ciel or Noir played, and then immediately evolve on top of it and freeze something on the board, whether it's a Digimon or a Tamer. Not to mention she herself, at the end of turn, if she's underneath a Sistermon Ciel or Noir, she can pop herself into security as a sort of pseudo form of recovery. This deck is incredibly streamlined, you only having 4 level 4s in the deck in the BT20 Bao Huckmon to utilize his combos as a way to make an entire board in a single turn. You're going to give up quite a bit of memory having to hard play down a Gankumon, but when you take a look at the Gankumon's effect to basically reduce his own cost by 4, in addition to the Bao Huckmon, who can reduce the cost by 2, you're basically giving up 6 memory to build an entire board, and then use the Gankumon's effect to evolve into a Gankumon X Antibody and then give all of them protection, which in my opinion is a pretty fair trade. The one thing that really scares me about this list is the fact that they only had 3 copies of a level 5 in the Saber Huckmon, where honestly, I think, I personally don't want to go below 5, where I had like 4 of him and like 1 of the other ones out there, but this one going for 3, they seem really confident in being able to pick up this card. With him in sources, he can essentially give a Jesmon double alliance, and if you just have any other Digimon on the board, you can hard slam him for 7, rest the Digimon at the end of the turn, and go directly into a Jesmon to build up a board that way as well. Probably the reason for the lack of level 5s in this deck is because of the increased amount of Ukomon at the level 3s and 4 of for the deck, as well as 2 copies of the Analog Youth alongside the From Master to Disciple option card as a way to really cycle through the deck, not to mention the Huckmon cards I mentioned before. The little tech that I think is so funny and so clever in this deck is the level 7 Examon, where the entire deck pretty much operates at the level 6s with the exception of the Ace card, but you typically only use him defensively, or if you have the Ganku and the Jesmon out at the same time, you can use him to close out the game. But if you still need that one more turn, you can just go into an Examon off of a Sistermon Blanc resting or suspending, and then you basically suspend your opponent's entire board, pop an option and a rested Digimon or Tamer. So you can pretty much lock them up for a turn in order to give you the extended 1 turn to win the game. You'll see that this list utilizes 4 of the Koromon Digitama cards, or Digi-Egg cards, where I think most decks are just typically running 4 of the Gurimon that you see as a 1 of in this list. I'm not sure what the decision here was. I think a lot of folks prefer or tend to favor the Gurimon because you can draw the card before the security is actually checked whenever you make an attack with your Jesmon, where with the Koromon you have to wait till the security is checked, and in some cases that might actually be too late. Typically, you want to swing with a Jesmon, and his effect lets you play down a Sistermon, so the Gurimon letting you pick up a card before you actually check the security means that you still have time to play a Sistermon in case you draw it. Overall, a super powerful and also really cool combo deck to play. If you've never played a Jesmon deck before and you're looking for something to maybe like kind of what your feet or get you started, this is definitely a list that I would recommend. Each week I allow my champion level and higher YouTube members to vote on decks they want to see featured in these Meta Report videos. And this week they voted to see super duper Control Royal Knights. Y'all aren't ready, let me tell you. If you like to vote on decks that you want to see featured in these kinds of videos, as well as some other cool perks and bonuses like early access to my content and also access to my stream VOD, consider becoming a YouTube member today. I want to give a big shout out to all the folks who support the channel, and with that, let's take a look at this incredible Royal Knights list. Okay, so right off the top, full disclaimer, this list did not win an event. It got 2nd place actually at the Chinese regional event that I mentioned before the Gallantmon deck won. However, I think this is honestly one of the most incredible meta calls of all time. The guy that put this list together was sniping Yugioh, and he definitely hit the mark. While on the surface it looks like a normal Royal Knights, actually I can't even say that. While on the surface it looks like a Royal Knights base deck, it just utilizes the Royal Knights tools? Engine? Mechanisms? as a way to basically play the game. Coming in with a whopping 22 Tamers in the list, nearly half the deck is just Tamers in general, it does some pretty incredible things to tax the opponents on every movement they make. You got the Keen and Career Tamer as a way to tax your opponent whenever they play Digimon by effects on their turn. Also, whenever he's played down, they have to trash an option or a Tamer in order to prevent you from drawing a card and gaining memory off of his play. The Mimi Tamer is going to tax your opponent whenever either player plays an option card. The Cardi Tamer is going to tax your opponent whenever they try to remove cards from your security. And the super clever inclusion of the RB1 Hokuto Amanakawa card is going to tax your opponent whenever they play down Digimon. Whether it's more card draw whenever your opponent plays a level 3 Digimon, or more memory whenever they play level 4 or higher Digimon. What's cool is that pretty much all these effects work in ways to end a Yugioh player's turn whenever they make that first swing with their level 4 Yugioh. With so many Tamers in the deck, he also includes 4 copies of the Islands of Adventure option card. And this might seem just as a way to play down more Tamers, but actually it's a clever little trap where if your opponent tries to swing with their Yugioh and you don't have a way to completely end the turn, you can use Island of Adventure when it's on the top of your security as a way to play down Digimon Emperor to delete a level 4 whenever he's played. Sorry, I was a little bit misleading when I said that I hit a level 4, where I'm just kind of referring to the Yugioh deck itself, where most of its level 4s are 5 cost or lower, which is what this card actually hits. And this gives you a way to actually prevent a DNA Digivolution whenever your opponent plays another Digimon with the Yugioh card itself. Not to mention, because most of the Yugioh cards are blue or yellow, it lets you play down a Magnamon for free. And keeping a Magnamon on the board is actually really important to this deck, because you want to be able to have something on board so that when a Yugioh does remove it, you have the ability to play down an Omekamon. Of course, thanks to the Cool Boys effect, whenever one of your Royalized Trace Digimon will be removed from the board, you can play the Omekamon down for free. And getting down an Omekamon is really important, because once your security's been whittled down, when he comes out, he could potentially evolve into the Omnimon X antibody as a way to completely wipe out your opponent's board. You've also got the Gallantmon here, who's also a Royal Knight, as a way to recover while also being a more defensive tool, hitting a 13,000 DP or higher Digimon on your opponent's side of the board if they have one, and if not, you can hit one of your own Omnimon X antibodies and then save it with one of the Last Guardian option cards. and then he allows you to basically recover and then become a blocker. I had a chance to actually watch the Chinese live stream and see some of the games that this deck was featured in, and I was incredibly impressed at like the building strategy as well as the player's ability to pilot and maneuver this deck around other Yugioh decks or other decks that weren't Yugioh in the game. It's a really clever idea, and honestly maybe one that makes me think that we're not really exploring control enough in the game. So depending on who you are, and to contrast with the beginning message of this video, which was Yugioh seems a little bit problematic to say the least, maybe there are answers we just haven't considered yet. With that, we're gonna wrap up the second week of the BT23 Hacker Slumber set over here in Asia. Again, Yugioh beating our deck, so if you're taking L's to this thing, don't feel bad about it. You're not alone in that respect. If you're looking for some more Digimon card game action, then definitely take a look at the channel where we actually watch some of the recent Singaporean community event matches that happened, and honestly, the plays and the players were mind-blowing. People were losing their mind watching it on stream. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.